Are you worried about going into a midlife crisis, but you want to know how you can prevent one? Well, I'm going to tell you right here, 7 ways to prevent a midlife crisis. Hi, I'm the Midlife Guy and welcome back to another episode of Midlife in a Minute. And today we are going to solve the question, can I prevent a midlife crisis? So first, to get into this, we need to just look at that term a little bit more. I've done an extensive video as terms of what is a midlife crisis, what are the symptoms, and what are the triggers for midlife crisis. But can you prevent a midlife crisis from happening? First of all, can you prevent midlife? Well, you can, but I don't think you want to, because the only way to prevent midlife is by dying beforehand. I don't think that's a good solution. What about crisis? Can you prevent a midlife crisis? Well, as I've talked about before, crisis depends on how you define crisis. But the reality is it's a continuous scale. As your problems increase, at what point does it become a crisis? And so your definition of where a crisis happens will be different to mine. Your wife's probably different to yours. Your husband's probably different to yours. So we're going to look at this question with that in mind, is where you define a crisis from happening. But firstly, I guess we need to address how widespread is a midlife crisis. Well, the academic literature is a little bit divided on this. Somewhere around about 20 to 30% is what they say will typically, of men in particular, that will go through a midlife crisis. Women also go through midlife crisis as well, 20 to 30%. But in reality, I think the number is a lot higher than that, because we don't all admit to going through a crisis. And secondly, because of where that subjective level is of where a problem becomes a crisis, we can think that we're just in a slump. We're just in a down patch. We just got the blues. But really, we are in a crisis, but we're in denial. So in reality, I think the number is closer to 70 to 80% of people that go through a significant period of difficulty in midlife that you could call a crisis. But the fact that that number is not 100% means that a midlife crisis can be prevented, because not everybody goes through it. So the question is, how do they? How do we? How do I? How do you prevent a midlife crisis? So the first way to prevent a midlife crisis is just to be so busy providing for the basics in life that you can't afford to have a crisis. Now, this is probably not one you want to aspire to, but the reality is that having a midlife crisis is somewhat of a luxury of those who have time, money, options, because people who are just providing for themselves and for their family, who are just making ends meet, who are spending a very large percentage of their time just getting the basics, simply don't have the luxury of having a midlife crisis. So the first point is, if you are approaching or getting into a midlife crisis, then be thankful. Be thankful that you actually are in a state of abundance of time, money, and options and so forth, that you can actually afford to have a midlife crisis. The second way, and a much better way to prevent a midlife crisis, is to cultivate close friendships. Now, this is not foolproof, but it is highly effective in reducing the symptoms of a midlife crisis and alleviating the path from difficulties in life, from the blues that we're feeling, from the struggles that we have to go through, the problems, the practical problems that we have to solve in everyday life, from the becoming a full-blown crisis. Because when we are alone, when we don't have people who we can open up to, who we can share our struggles with, who we can bounce ideas off, who we can brainstorm with, who can encourage us, then we are much more likely to get into a crisis mode. And let's face it, today we are less and less connected practically, face to face. We are connected social media wise, but we don't have as much of that interpersonal thing going on, the whole village thing, the connected across the generations, as what times in people past did. So if we can reverse some of that and cultivate a few deep friendships, then we have somebody to talk to, somebody to open up about our issues, a safe place to be able to share what is going on in our lives, and help them to see things from a new perspective, help us to see things from a new perspective. And to do that iron sharpens iron thing, And so to prevent a midlife crisis, one very important way and very useful way you can do that is by cultivating strong friendships. Right, a third way is all to do with vision. Now, if you don't have any vision in your life, if you're just drifting through your job, drifting through your marriage, just drifting through your life, then you are a strong candidate for a midlife crisis. But even if you do have a vision, when did you last revisit that? Do you look at your vision every year and say, yes, this is still the vision I want to head for? Do you make tweaks to it each year to say, well, yes, now I want to add some more clarity to it, or I want to slightly change the direction of it? Keep that vision front of mind and revise it on a regular basis, and that will definitely help to prevent you falling into a midlife crisis. The fourth thing is to look after your health. If you look back on one of my earlier videos about the triggers of a midlife crisis, one of those can be getting a health scare, finding out that your health isn't quite as peachy as what you thought it was, or perhaps confirming some fears, some thoughts that you're getting older and you're not going to get any better. You're not going to get any better physically, or the way you look, or your muscle mass, or so on. So if you look after yourself, then that is a way of preventing you moving through a midlife crisis. If you can look after yourself physically and also mentally through those midlife years. So I'm not going to tell you how to do that. You probably already know the things that you need to do. But I mean, the basics are getting to bed at a reasonable hour, so you're getting enough regular sleep. It's about your diet and what you're eating, and about regular exercise, and keeping your bad cholesterol at decent levels, at low levels, and getting enough exercise for your heart and your muscles and so on, and getting regular checkups, so that if anything does pop up, you can get on top of it early. So number 4 is to look after your health. A fifth way of preventing a midlife crisis is by not neglecting the spiritual side of your life. I know this can be touchy, this can be a controversial subject, but at some point you have to face the reality of your own mortality. We are all going to die. Everything that has a beginning has an end, and at some point that is going to be you. And yes, when we were young, when we were in our teens, maybe in our 20s, that seems like a long way away. The reality is sometimes it isn't. We never know when our time is up. But as we move in through midlife, we tend to have a greater appreciation of our mortality, and that we're halfway through life, and that the end is going to be coming at some point in the near future. Hopefully not near future, but we're closer to the end than the beginning. And so if you just keep putting off the spiritual side of life, thinking about what is going to happen to me when I hit the grave. Is there life? Is there life after I hit the grave? What is that? And start exploring that and start seeking the truth. If you keep putting that off, then you do have a risk of getting into a midlife crisis when some sort of health scare happens, or someone you love dies suddenly. Then it can be a massive trigger for you getting into a midlife crisis. So while you're still healthy, while you're not in that grief stage when you're facing somebody else's mortality, then start to think about the spiritual side of life and start to explore, who am I, who made me, and where am I going after I hit the grave? Number 6. So, are you the same person you were when you were 25? What about when you were 35? The answer is no. Most of us like to think, I haven't changed. I am what I am and I haven't changed. But the reality is that you have changed. We are not the same people that we were 20 years ago. And one of those areas that changes is our values. And the things that we valued 20 years ago, 10 years ago, maybe even 5 or 2 years ago, those things change. And if we continue to do the same activities based on decisions we made from earlier values, then we will find a disconnect between our actions and what we're living and our values, which leads to unhappiness. And since a midlife crisis is primarily an identity crisis, an issue with who we are, why are we here, and where are we going, then if our actions become disaligned with who we are now as a person, then that can spiral us into a real crisis. So I'd encourage you to look at your values. Do an exercise. There are plenty of them around. I even do them with my clients coaching. I have something called Core Value Compass. It's an exercise of examining what are your core values, your 3 or 4 core values, the things that you could not live without. If you were on a desert island and you had all your needs for shelter and food and so forth taken care of, what would be those values you'd want to have for yourself? What would be the values you'd want anybody else to have with you? What are the things that you see around you which really make you angry? And so they could be an indicator of what values are really important to you. So examine your values, do it on a regular basis, and check whether the way you are living, the decisions that you're now making, are aligned with those values. And that will help to prevent a midlife crisis. All right, thanks for staying with me. We've got to number 7 already. Number 7 is all about maintaining an optimal work-life balance for you and for those you care about. Now, work-life balance is a little bit of a loaded term, and some people say balance is just the wrong word. And I get it. Balance sort of implies an equal amount of time in work and leisure, or equal amount of energy, and obviously an equal amount just isn't realistic. And whether you want to have work-life harmony or work-life optimization, the reality is we use the term work-life balance because that's what's most common, what people search for, and what we talk about what the words we use when we're talking about this subject. Look, whether you want to use the term balance or harmony or optimization or some other word, the point is the same. You need to work out a balance or a structure around your life that has an appropriate amount of time and energy and investment in the different core parts of your life. There's work, there's family, there's leisure time, there's your own physical and mental health, there's spiritual, those different areas. And yes, we can go for a time when we're exceptionally busy, when we've got to be spending 70 or 80 hours at our job for a short time to get a project done. But over the longer term, have we made the right decisions that we are investing the right amount of time and energy into important areas of our life? Because if we continue down the same track of spending endless hours, especially on our work, then we can find that one day that all of a sudden we don't know who we are anymore. We don't know what we're doing, and we've made a bit of money, but where am I going? And maybe you've also at the verge of losing your marriage, becoming estranged from your kids, and maybe you're impacted your health as well through stress and so forth. And so the 7th way of preventing a midlife crisis is to examine the decisions that you're making around the balance in your life. So I encourage you to go away and do that and think, where are some areas that I can make a correction so that I don't cause myself to have bigger problems down the track and potentially a midlife crisis or worse. Actually, a video is coming up very soon when I'm going to address this whole aspect of work-life balance in some detail and propose a couple of models, the way that you can look at the balance and optimizing your work-life balance. So watch out for that, is coming very soon. Okay, so that's it for this episode. Now I've got a question for you. A couple of questions actually. So if you're over 50, 55, 60 and you've avoided a midlife crisis and you've stumbled upon this video, tell me in the comments, how did you avoid a midlife crisis? My viewers, people watching this video want to know, was it one of the 7 that I've mentioned, or was something else that I haven't included here? What is it that you have used to avoid a midlife crisis? I'd love to know. And if you're not over 55, if you're under 55, what are you doing? What active steps are you taking to avoid a midlife crisis in your life? Go in the comments and let me and the other watchers know so that we can benefit from your wisdom. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, to like, to click the little bell if you're watching this on YouTube to get notified of new videos. Share it on your favorite social media channel so that other people in midlife can join the discussion and we can learn from one another as to how it is that we can avoid the pitfalls and the damaging effects of going through a midlife crisis on our own. So, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. I'm the Midlife Guy. This has been Midlife in a Minute. If you have a question, I'm only a comment away. If you found this video helpful, then hit the like button and share it with your friends. And make sure you subscribe, as I'm putting up new stuff each week to help you make midlife the turning point in a life worth living. Need a personalised guide? Your own coach through life and career is only a few clicks away over at GuyMullenCoaching.com. Thanks for watching. See you soon.